Neal Atebara, thank you so much for coming down. May I call you doctor?
You may call me Neal. You can call me Jay, you can call me Ray.
Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about the science fair at the Hawaii Academy of Science. You are very active in such a thing, and only 2 weeks ago we had the 2010 Hawaii Science Fair, and I want to find out how it went. How did it go?
It went great, absolutely great. We were a little bit nervous because we have a new director, new venue. It's the first time at the Hawaii Convention Center, and actually first time without state fundings. And that was weighing very heavily on our minds, but we were able to raise the funds. Got the fair going. It was the largest ever, 600 students. It went great. It was actually flawless execution, and it was just absolutely wonderful.
So give me some metrics. How many students? How many judges? What's the size? What's the dimension of the fair this year?
Pretty big. Actually, it starts off with about 7,000 students across the state, public and private high schools. They all compete at the district level. From there, about 600 are selected to go to the state science fair, and that was at the Hawaii Convention Center. From there, there's all kinds of awards, and there's a lot of community support. There's awards for every different category you can imagine. But the top 22 students from the science fair, from the state science fair, go on to the International Science and Engineering Fair, and this year it's in San Jose, California. There's, like I mentioned, there's a lot of community support, so we have a lot of volunteers for every imaginable thing. There's about 500 judges every year who volunteer their time. There are about 200 or 300 volunteers on top of that who assist with the running of the science fair. And of course we have thousands of students, teachers, and public who attend every year.
So give me a picture. I mean, some people refer to the Hawaii Science Fair as Hawaii's Super Bowl of science.
Absolutely, this is the Super Bowl of science. We have high school athletics, and there's football, basketball, tennis. In academics, I don't think there are as many areas where students can excel, especially in the sciences. So I see this as really critical for our education. This is all outside of the classroom. So students take on their own initiative. So they ask basic questions about science, and then they go through the whole scientific process. It fosters critical thinking. So they find out a question, they determine what is the best way to answer this question. They seek out advisors to help them accomplish their goals. They carry through this project through fruition, which takes months, sometimes years. And then at the science fair itself, they learn valuable communication skills, so they can actually help other people understand what their project is all about.
So what grades are involved, for starting when and ending when?
6 to 12. 6 to 12, all public and private high schools across the state.
So if I'm in the 6th grade, I might very well be shy and reserved about such a thing, and not a lot of confidence, worried about the competition aspect of it, worried about being embarrassed. Do you mentor me? Do you help me? Do you give me classes and courses and people who will help me with that?
Well, first of all, Jay, I can't imagine you being shy. But if you were, and if you were a student...
You didn't know me in the 6th grade.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Fair enough. This is a perfect opportunity to get involved with something. The science fair is more than academics. It is partially. You learn critical skills in critical thinking, but it's really about organization and communication and determination. It's a way of becoming a part of something bigger. The wonderful thing about participating is that it's just being there, just finishing your project and entering.
Yeah.
True, it's a complicated. Yes, true. It's a competition, and there are top winners, but for me, just doing the project is a wonderful thing.
So is there, what's the role of the teacher, for example? If I'm in the sixth grade and I'm worried and, worrying about embarrassment and the like, who's there to show me how to communicate, to show me how to present, to show me how to write it up?
Well, of course, teachers are mentors. They guide us through life. I know in high school, when I was in the science fair, Mrs. Netley Yokoyama was my science teacher.
And you remember even now?
I do, of course. Without her, I
we
would
always
not have,
remember good teachers.
We always. I mean, they are the stuff of life. They show us, right. In addition to our parents, of course, they help us, guide us into directions that we might never have thought of. And I would not have been in the science fair if she didn't suggest it and didn't guide me toward that direction.
And what about parents? I mean, I have the sense that no kid is going to spend a lot of time doing this unless his parents are behind him. Or put it another way, is if he does it, his parents really have to help him out. Am I right?
Well, yes and no. I think having supportive parents is, of course, valuable in life. And I think, supporting the student who is working toward the science fair is, of course, very important. But you'd be surprised that almost all of the projects are initiated by the student. It's not because their parents want them to do it or doing the project for them. That actually just doesn't happen. The ideas come from the student. The ways, the initial ideas, at least planning about how to go about it. And they'll get, assistance from real scientists, if they're going on a wrong track. But then they'll carry it out for themselves.
Oh, I want to talk about that. So if I'm this sixth grade kid again, and I say to myself, I really need to know more. I need somebody to put the pieces together for me. I need to talk to a real scientist. What do I do?
Well, the Hawaii Academy of Sciences, we're trying to put together a database that can link students and scientists. And so we can have, we act like a clearinghouse where we make the connections because we know a lot of students and we know a lot of scientists and we really want to put them together. Some of these, like I said, some of the projects are really cutting edge science. They are true science. They're not just poster boards and talking about something that's already known in books. It's true science. Some of them, especially on the younger levels, are more about education. They're more about teaching a point about ecology, about green science, about photovoltaic cells. It's maybe not cutting edge science, but I think those, especially for a shy student, they're really learning about skills that are important in life. Being able to research a particular topic and then talk about it comfortably.
I hesitate to say this, but I think there are probably people out there who have not been at the science fair and who haven't seen any of these projects. And I'm wondering if you could describe one, a successful one, a middle-of-the-road one, so that the people watching this tape will have the feeling for what kind of projects those kids are doing.
Okay.
Give us an example.
Well, first of all, you get to the Hawaii Convention Center, you go up the escalators, and you enter the largest ballroom in the state of Hawaii, and it is filled from wall to wall with students and their projects. It is huge. And you walk around and you just see the magnitude of the work that's gone into this for the students. Each of the 600 spend months on their research project, and you just don't know where to start. You talk to any student and they are very eager to tell you about what they've done. They're passionate about it because they've really committed a lot of time into this, and this is a question that they are genuinely interested in. There was a student last year who had the cutest project. He was, I think he was a sixth grader, and he liked cars. And so what he did was he built some toy wooden cars and put little wheels on it. It's like the kind of pine wood derby kind of thing. And he wanted to know how important air friction was. So what he did was he got these cars, he built a ramp, and he had them slide down, and depending on the shape of the car, he determined which ones came down the fastest. And of course, I'm thinking there's all kinds of problems with his methodology. The wheels weren't standardized. The ramp wasn't standardized. He had a blow dryer on the bottom as his wind tunnel.
Oh, really?
And but it's just the cutest thing because he had all the basics down. He was asking questions in the proper format. He didn't control every little thing, but his wind tunnel was actually not too different than the Wright brothers when they had their wind tunnel. And so I thought, this guy's going to be a great engineer. He has the basics down, and he has the gumption to take his ideas and not think, oh, well, there's too many problems with this. I'm not going to even try. He's going to say, I'm going to, this is what I know. I'm going to push forward with what I know and do this. And I have great confidence that next year and the year after, it's going to become more and more sophisticated. And one day he's going to be an engineer working at Ford or Toyota. And
I noticed that too, Neal. I noticed it. I guess you made me a judge, which I really appreciate over there.
Thank you.
A celebrity judge, Eppes. But you made me a judge, and I watched them, and I had the impression that these kids actually follow the same project from year to year. They get started on something,
Mm-hmm.
and then they advance their own concept, their own science into the next year and the year. It becomes a passion for them year after year. No?
well, this is like real life. We get interested in something and we follow that path, and it sometimes actually leads us to our careers. In fact, a lot of times students who participate in the science fair and eventually go off to their careers find some very close linkages between what they're doing in adult life with what they did in the science fair.
You're young and impressionable. Well, I do want to hear your story. I want to know 28 years ago, you won at the science fair here in Honolulu, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to know what project that you had and how you thought it up.
You're going to tax my memory now. My project was in astronomy. It was called The Origin of the Spectral Band Emission at 3.28 microns for planetary nebula NGC 6369.
No, there's a title.
Yes.
So how would you think of that up? I mean, what made you think of that?
Well, I was sleeping one night and I just woke up with a start and said, I should study planetary nebulae NGC 6369.
All right.
No, I was in a science camp during the summer,
Yeah.
sponsored by the National Science Foundation, and we learned calculus and physics. And part of it was going to different. It was in Hilo, so we went to different places on
So
the
you
Big
grew up
Island.
in Hilo.
I grew up in Hilo.
Along with Dustin Shindo and,
Yes.
and Darren Kimura and all the Hilo guys.
I'm not so entrepreneurial as those guys, but yeah, they're a great bunch of guys.
They both seated in this very same studio.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, I am honored.
Anyway, so there you are in Hilo. And
I'm in Hilo. We all went up to Mauna Kea to study to look at the telescopes, and I've always been interested in astronomy, but I didn't think that was going to be my project. I think a lot of people wanted to study on Mauna Kea. There were, I think, 30 kids in the group, but luckily I was one of the few who didn't get mountain sickness. So
Sure. Altitude, yeah.
So I actually kind of moved to the head of the line.
Competition.
Yeah, that's right. Survival of the fittest. Maybe I was born to be on the mountain.
I guess so.
The high altitude, but it was great. Professional astronomers would die for a few hours of telescope time up on Mauna Kea, and it's the best spot in the world to study the stars.
Yeah, what a break.
It was amazing, and so here I was, in the control room, and it's back in the day where they didn't have, remote control from ground level. It was you really go up there. You have to stay one night at the halfway point to get acclimated.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there in the cold and shivering, and had this small little Atari joystick, and I was controlling this huge,
that's great.
huge
What an
telescope.
experience.
Yeah, and we were gathering data. To be honest, I didn't really understand the project at that time because I was just kind of thrown into it. And over the course of the next year, probably, I understood it more. And from the raw data, I did do the calculations myself, and I figured out how to analyze the data on my own. So I think that was my contribution. I guess they, back then they deemed it worthy enough to be a winner at the science fair. To
So
be
what
honest,
happened now? So you won. Now what doors does that open? What channels does that give you access to?
Well, first thing is it gave me a lot of confidence. They go to a place, big room with 600 kids who are interested in science. That doesn't happen every day. So it was. I really saw that it was really cool to be interested in science, and I saw the possibilities. How there are so many different fields of science. It's all around us. Everything we do today, from microwaves to the internal combustion engines in our cars, to the airplanes that we're in, it's all about science. And all of the many of the things that we take for granted in civilization are due to scientific advances at some point in time. Even books that we read. I'm not talking about the iPad, even just regular
books.
printed books. Yeah, the Gutenberg Bible, and that was cutting edge at that time.
It wasn't that long ago.
Not too. I remember it well.
So you got to travel to the East Coast
I did.
and present there. What was that like?
It was a great experience. It's really an honor to represent your state. And you meet a lot of kids from all across the country and across the world, because it is the International Science Fair. They're good. They have lots of different categories. So I say I won third place, and they think, oh wow. But there's lots of categories. They spread it around.
Mm-hmm. Everybody gets something.
Yes,
a lot of
yes,
people get
yes.
something. Well, so you make it sound like this was a new thing 28 years ago, but not. This organization was established in 1925.
That's right. The Hawaii Academy of Science. That's the organization that started and has continuously run the Hawaii State Science and Engineering Fair. Was started in 1925 by a group of enlightened scientists and sugarcane workers and physicians who, at that time, Hawaii is a territory. We didn't have a very educated workforce, especially in the sciences, and they saw this need, and so they decided to promote science and education in Hawaii, and have been doing so ever since.
Boy, that was visionary.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
And now it's 80 years. Did I get that right? 80 years.
could be.
1925, 85 years.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. So, this has really come of age, and it's really important to Hawaii. What I'm impressed by is the fact that every little town in every island, every kid in every school could do this. It's the great leveler.
It is. I think that might have been one of the reasons why I was it had such a big impact on my life. It's the first time, coming from a small town, that I interacted with a lot of kids on that kind of level. And when you come from a small school, you really don't know how much you know until you kind of test yourself.
Yeah.
And this is a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So when you went to Washington, you won some kind of prize over there, I guess.
Yep.
And then now you had confidence at a national level.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do with that confidence?
I guess went on with my life. Went to college and medical school. I was interested in a lot of things back then. Science, engineering, architecture, art. But this is definitely a thing that steered me toward the path of science. I really got the bug, and I really appreciated. Just got the thrill of discovering something, even though it was very small, something that nobody's ever known before. and in a very small way being able to contribute to the general knowledge of humankind. Even if in a really small way, to kind of think that you had some part in that is just a really, really, really cool feeling. And so throughout college, medical school, even now, I do as much research as I can. It's just a lot of fun.
Just to stay up on things, just to
Yeah.
be a science person.
Yeah, yeah.
That's because that defined you. It gave you your identity somehow.
Yeah.
And even now, 28 years later, you're actively involved in the science fair and the Hawaii Academy of Science. You put in a ton of time. You're into payback mode big time with the science fair, so that the way it defined you 28 years ago is still having a daily effect, Neal, don't you think? Every day.
Little would I have known back then. But yeah, no, it's a privilege. It's a pleasure and privilege to help out with the organization. It's helped me a lot, and I just could not imagine it going away. It would be a real shame to the thousands of kids in the future who would not be able to benefit in this way. I think there's 7,000 students every year who would not have this kind of opportunity. And if Hawaii were not represented at the International Science and Engineering Fair, what would that say? That we don't have the resources enough to support?
Well, yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, you've had some issues. The science fair, now 85 years old, it has some issues. It has some issues around funding. What's been going on?
Yeah, well, up until last year, the state legislature has been very generous in donating or bequeathing $200,000 to $250,000 a year for the science fair. That's how much it takes to run the science fair, because we have to rent the auditorium. We actually fly kids in from the neighbor islands. We send them
you
to
fly them in.
Yes,
That's
we
very
do.
good.
Yeah. Send kids to the International Science and Engineering Fair. We have one full-time staff person to organize the fair, which is a ton of work.
I'm sure.
But besides that person, everybody else is volunteers, like myself and you as a judge, and all the other hundreds of people who are involved with the science fair. But until last year, we were funded by the state. As you know, because of budget cuts, we've actually lost all that funding. So we were actually in January, even up until January, we were going into the science fair with a deficit of $25,000. So we went into overdrive mode to kick up our fundraising efforts. And I think a lot of it is that we've never publicized what the Hawaii Academy of Science does, and we've never really put a lot of work into publicizing how great a thing the science fair is. I think it's because we're mostly academics, and academics don't like to be very showy, and they like to understate the achievements of they try. I don't know. We're boring.
It sounds like scientists.
We're boring,
Scientists are
yes.
like that.
Yeah.
That's what they do. I mean, the UH.
Scientists, we're not good promotionists.
Maybe we can help you.
Well, we're trying to learn. That's for sure.
So so here you are in a bit of a pickle, having had that state funding for many years, and now no state funding. So what do you do? How do you get through the annual fair?
Well, I think the most important thing is to get the word out, and to make people actually realize that there is a possibility that the fair could end. A lot of people don't think that is a possibility because I guess they've always thought that the fair was part of the state government, when in actuality it's a private nonprofit organization. And that was heavily dependent on the state in the past, but now we're entirely on our own.
Yeah, so that's different. So it's a different model. And so I guess the question I would put to you is how has the change in the funding arrangement changed the fair, if at all?
Well, in a way, it's I think what's the term? Fire sharpens steel.
Yeah.
So, and I believe we're up to the task. For example, the move to the Hawaii Convention Center was debated because it's more expensive to move to the Hawaii Convention Center, and it's a step up in quality, but it's more expensive. And at a time when we've lost funding, it was a move that we debated long and hard. But I think it was the right move because we're now thinking out of the box. I think we are becoming the organization that we should have been. We're more accountable. We are more creative. We are more in touch with the community about what we're doing, and we're more aggressively seeking out donations. So there's more interaction between the science fair and the community.
Yeah, like I'm sure that's the way it was back in 1925, because it needed that to get started.
Yeah.
But this goes to a larger issue, Neal. I mean, it's the issue of something that's happened, I'd say, in recent years, within the last, say, 10 or 15 years, where the nonprofit industry in Hawaii, I call it an industry, it's like a business,
right.
Has become dependent on government.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a kind of crossroads somehow, what happened here in the last year or two. And you've done well at it, but it teaches us not to be dependent on government.
Mm-hmm.
And although you undoubtedly will get some government funding in the future when things get better and so forth, I think it teaches us that a robust nonprofit organization and trade associations, educational associations, science and tech organizations have to be self-sufficient. They can't rely on government money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. We all need to be accountable, and we all need to be able to pull ourselves up. Sometimes we need some help, but we must not depend on that or take it for granted.
Yeah. So this is chapter 2 now.
Yes.
It's a new, robust, highly energized chapter 2. That's what I see.
That's right.
So you're reorganizing, and you think next year you'll do the convention center again? Because I must say that I saw the science fair at the Blaisdell
Mm-hmm.
exhibition hall, I guess it was,
Yeah.
a couple, 3 times, and it was impressive. I mean, it was huge and noisy, by the way.
Yeah.
It was so many people involved,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone came. But now the convention center had a different. It was elegant,
Mm-hmm.
It was a great venue for
Mm-hmm.
the fair. So your preference then would be to go back to the convention center.
Yes. Actually, I would love to see that be our permanent home.
Well, imagine a sea of kids with their little booths, and they put their presentations up, and you walk by, and they're so engaging, and you don't even have to but glance at them, and they're ready to tell you everything.
They're just eager to tell you. It is just it's a wonderful sight. I mean, you don't see such enthusiasm for learning and for communicating. It's I don't know. It's just really, really special.
Now, you've had some fabulous winners in recent years who have done things capable of the best science in the country or the world. I mean, curing cancer, that sort of thing. Can you tell us about some of those kids, the ones who stand out on a national or global level that way?
Well, just this year alone, the first place winner is an 11th grader at St. Andrew's Priory.
That's not 3 blocks from here.
Is it? Yes, it is. It is. Her name is Connie Liu,
Mm-hmm.
and she's interested in mathematics. And believe it or not, she's actually come up with 9 new formulas, mathematical formulas, that describe the triangle. And when I first saw this, I thought, okay, wait a minute. I mean, triangle's kind of been along for a while.
Everybody knows about the triangle.
Yeah, and this Pythagorean theorem and all of that. How can you possibly come up with a new mathematical formula? But she has, and it's not like an overnight kind of fly-by-night thing. She was interested in this for a while. She's been working at it for almost a year, and the formulas that honestly, I don't understand them.
But wait a minute, you're a scientist yourself.
Well, I like to talk to her and see if I'm capable of understanding it. But these kids are really smart, and I think as a judge, the thing you first have to get over is intimidation, because they're talking a mile a minute, and they're talking about things that you've never really thought about, and so it takes a little while to kind of get to speed with what they're doing. But anyway, to get back to her project, it's true science. She's actually made breakthroughs in mathematics, and so much so that there are some mathematicians from Cornell who are going to be flying over to Honolulu to talk with her about her accomplishments.
Oh, gee whiz. What is that? I mean, is it child prodigy, or is it a really smart kid, or is it a great nurturing school and family? What makes a kid learn a new way to analyze triangles? Or is it that, and this is something you've been close to, maybe you can help me with this, is it that kids at a certain age have a certain ability to think out of the box, and when you unleash them, they can go to the moon? Is that what it is?
Sure. I mean, you raise kids, you answer, the questions that come out of their mouths, it boggles the mind. And it's because they haven't been constrained by a lot of things, that they haven't been told, no, you can't, that's not possible yet. So a lot of it is being able to think all over the place, inside the box, outside the box, on top of it, under it. They're crawling all over the place. But the other thing I want to, talk about is that the flip side. If we didn't have the science fair, if Honolulu did not have the opportunity to shine in this fashion, would we actually even know that she's capable of these kinds of academic
She might never
feats?
do it. Might never get noticed at all.
She's never been challenged to do that. She may get 90% or 100% on every math test at St. Andrews Priory, but would we actually know how much she's capable above that?
So this tests her the way it tested you,
Yeah.
to go to some level that you might never have had the confidence to go to.
And that's why we have competitions. We have competitions in athletics, many competitions. I wish we had more in academics, and I definitely think we need more in science. And this is the Super Bowl of science for the kids, and that's why we need to keep it going.
But it doesn't compute for me in some ways, because I keep hearing about DOE and the problems, and here you have the very same DOE. These are public school kids. They're not necessarily from any private school. They're right down home, and they do so well. So this, we've heard the characterization many times that Hawaii's kids are undereducated and all that. It isn't necessarily so. Hawaii's kids can be really wonderful.
Absolutely. We have a extremely education-oriented society in Hawaii, and we have very bright kids. And some of these kids will go to public school, some go to private school. I don't see that as being the biggest defining feature of a student. I think it's important to look at many different qualities of students, what they're interested in, what their strengths are, and whether they go to public school or private school. I mean, it takes them down to a different school, but it certainly doesn't limit what they're able to achieve. And I think there are great teachers in public school and private school. If there are challenges within the educational system, then I would be very hopeful that we can overcome these challenges and have the kind of educational system that the kids really should have. And I think it should be, education is like air. It should be, especially for a democratic society, it's the basis for our freedoms. And so I guess I know I'm preaching to the choir, because everybody believes education is so important. But if the public school system can be improved, it's our duty to improve it.
Yeah, you know what? It just gave me a thought, and that is this. You go down to the science fair and you see those rows and rows, a sea of kids, a sea of this great talent, great energy. They're the sweetest in the world. And there's no place that has kids like this, really. They're kissable, every one of them. So.
And there are kids too.
How did they get in the room? We must have done something right.
Yeah, you're right.
So the thing is that, when you recognize that, when you go to something like the science fair and you see it at critical mass with all those kids together and all the judges, it's a love fest is what it is. Then you say, I would give anything for these kids as a group, not just my kid, but these kids. I would give anything. I would write a check and clear up the furlough business immediately.
Yeah.
I would fix the schools. No school would leak. All that stuff.
It does hit you very, very strongly. I've had, can't tell you how many people have come up and told me that being at the science fair gives them hope for humanity. And it may seem like an exaggeration, but you do get that feeling because you have all these bright minds who love learning. And if there's one thing that I would love my kids to take away is to learn, is to love learning. Because if you truly love learning about everything, then you'll never be bored. And you can't help but succeed in life because you're always being prepared for the next step.
Isn't that true? You have a quality of life that goes beyond your immediate environment. And I think that it's more important, it's wasted on the youth. It's more important as you get older.
Yeah.
You got to keep your mind active. You got to keep your sensibilities sharp. You have to appreciate everything and have an interaction with what's around you. And if you do that, you'll have a better life at any point.
Yeah.
So these kids are not only doing that, but they're showing us that we should do it.
They're teaching us. Yeah. They're living They're living the life. They're living the life that we should aspire to.
Yeah. It's interesting how that works. We teach them, they teach us.
Yeah.
It's the tension of the generations. So now I want to talk to you about the relationship of the science fair with the university, because I don't know if people really understand how close that bond is. Back in 1925, that was the core relationship that made it happen. And my understanding is that it's still happening just that way. The university is heavily involved, the scientists at the university.
Well, certainly most of the people on the board are professors at the University of Hawaii. And the UH has been tremendously supportive over the years. They grant us the office space for the Hawaii Academy of Science. Many of the judges come from the University of Hawaii, and after all, it's a major academic institution in Hawaii, so it's only natural that they be involved with the Super Bowl of Science. But we have affiliations with all academic centers in Hawaii, high schools, intermediate schools, all the universities. I think it can be and it should be a central common grounds for academics, education, and science in Hawaii.
Well, the university, I'm thinking of Gareth Williams, who is your chief judge person.
Yes.
And been that since probably 1925. Gareth, you hear us talking about you? He's not that old. But, Gareth is totally committed, and he's an example to me of the kind of energy you get from the university on this program.
It really speaks to not just the quality of the student participants, but it's the quality of the judging and the quality of the people at every level of this organization. The judges take the job very seriously. You haven't seen people more passionate and arguing so vehemently about who they think is a stronger candidate. And it's not that easy a job, because you're comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah.
Especially when you get to the higher tiers, you're saying, well, this mathematics-based project has greater merit than this astronomy project or this microbiology project or this engineering project. It's extremely hard to compare these things, and they take it so seriously that I hear it almost came to fists.
Really?
And,
That's good, though.
yes, it is good.
They
in
really
a good
care
way.
about it.
They
yeah.
do. They want to get it right. This is not just some academic exercise. They know that it's that the decisions that they make are impacting on the careers of the kids, and it really they're choosing Hawaii's representatives to the broader world, and it is important because we are showcasing to the world what the best and brightest of Hawaii's kids can do, and we want to get it right.
A couple of years ago, I was doing my radio show, and I went down to the science fair. Christine Trusty was there that year.
Yeah.
And when I went down to the science fair, I brought a recording device, and I invited some of the real judges, not celebrity, but real judges to come in, and participate. And they were climbing all over themselves to explain to me the theory of how you judge,
Oh, okay.
And it was really a very interesting kind of mix when you put them together. I'm sure I'd like to be a fly on the wall when they make their deliberations. Hey,
It's very interesting. It's probably I've never been in the legislature, but probably like
something like
probably
that.
like making sausages.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Well, now in your chapter 2 here, starting in 2010, you're probably going to spend more time in the legislature to see what can be done, not only in money, but in other things the legislature can do to help build and encourage the organization. But also with the trade associations. I mean, there are a number of science and technology trade associations that would probably be a wonderful connection for the science fair, because you guys are you are the poster child organization for science and technology. Nothing is as important as you are. So this is an interesting time coming up. What's your plan on that? How does that look for you to try to get together with these trade associations that have really never spent a lot of time at the university or at the high schools?
Well, I think we have a unique opportunity to be the common grounds for many different aspects of education and technology and science. So I found that it's been very rewarding for us as an organization to reach out, not just to the university, not just to the high schools, but to the high-tech industry in Hawaii, to the different community supporting organizations, the banks and insurance companies, to the teachers groups. It's been nice because everybody loves the science fair. How can you be against kids? How can you be against their futures and education? And so it's made my job much easier and very gratifying to be able to solicit and coordinate people helping a cause that they feel is worthy.
Yeah, it's hard to resist the science fair. It's hard not to help them out. They have a certain aura about them. But one thing I worry about, you use the word jobs. And to me, in some ways it's overused these days, especially at the national level. But the question is, so you train these kids, you get them motivated. Science fair gets them motivated, and they get interested in science, the exclusion maybe of other things, and they're passionate about their life as yours is defined by it. They go to school on the mainland, in a good science school, they get great grades, they become scientists or at least technology people, okay, and then they look back here, and they see there are no jobs. Okay, what are we going to do about that? This is a serious problem. In other words, you can train every kid in Hawaii to be a great scientist, but at the end of the day, if they're living in the East Coast, it's a loss to Hawaii. These wonderful kids, we're losing them at a rapid rate. You came back, not everybody comes back.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids want to come back, and you're right. I think it's important to develop a strong science and technology-based economy in Hawaii. And part of what I see as our mission is to train not just future scientists, but future leaders And I think the kind of skills that they develop really are the skills that's required for leadership, be it in science or whatever field. And I would hope that many of them come back to Hawaii and not just work in science, but be leaders in science to help grow our technology industry, to be community leaders that do not fear science, but embrace it, understand it, and use it where it is appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Just occurred to me that aside from the funding issue that the Science Fair and the Hawaii Academy of Science could be interested in dealing with the legislature, another issue it could be interested in dealing with the legislature is building that economy in order to make it worthwhile, to justify training all these kids and getting them excited about science. And now we also have to make something for them to come back to.
Well, it all goes all the way back to 1925 when the Hawaii Academy of Science knew that we needed an educated and science-minded workforce, and that's why they founded. That's why they got together. And today, I would like to think in a small way, we work toward that goal too. I mean, we want Hawaii's economy to be strong and vibrant and resistant to changes in global economies. And I want us to be able to pull ourselves up by ourselves using our own resources. So it's these principles, not just the science fair. I think is a means to an end. It's a tool for building minds.
It always was, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Even from the beginning, it was intended to build minds beyond just going to school and make careers and lives for people. We can't lose sight of that. So here we are, and we're going to have to diversify the economy, and maybe the science fair can play a role in that as a sort of a secondary goal in terms of expressing itself to the legislature and the government. In the new chapter going forward, what do you see happening to the science fair and the Hawaii Academy of Science in the next 5-10 years? Do you have a vision of that?
I do.
Do you mind sharing it? Part of it?
Well, I think we're on the verge of doing some really wonderful things. I think the science fair itself has always been done first class, and the Academy has always been able to do that extremely well, and so we're not going to touch with that formula. But I think there's more that we can do. You touched upon the idea that that we know students and we know scientists. We try to link them together. So we really want to promote science and education in Hawaii beyond just the science fair. We have another symposium called the Pacific Symposium for Science and Sustainability. 35 students from across the Pacific come and give a mini conference, and they learn a lot of valuable skills there too.
Oh, that's great.
We want to do a lot of things like that. We have Science Cafe, we have a lot of ideas. I think once we have our fundraising strategy more firmly in place, then we can really realize a lot of the dreams that we have. And there's lots of opportunities for an organization that sits at the crossroads between education, science, and technology.
I'll tell you a short story and see how resonant it is with the science fair. There's a fellow by the name of Bob Olson. Olson was the guy who put together the new Fitzsimmons, which is a big tech incubator, tech park just outside of Denver. It used to be a federal hospital, like Tripler, military, and then I guess they gave it up for the tech park, and his job was to make it into a tech park. So he had to bring companies from all over the place and had to bring researchers from all over the place. And what was his secret? I asked him this, what was his secret? What made it work? What built critical mass? He said breakfast. It's a breakfast. What is it?
Wheaties?
You know, the way to a person's heart is by meals and food and all that. But you know what he did is he created a weekly, or maybe more or less frequently, breakfast for all the researchers.
Uh-huh.
And at the breakfast, they would share their work.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for a scientist, there's nothing more gratifying than being able to share the work. This is,
Right.
I believe, one of the reasons why the science fair is so important
Right.
and so effective, because
Right.
these kids can share their work. Somebody will listen,
Uh-huh.
and it validates everything.
So scientists are just overgrown science fair participants.
Yes, absolutely. Don't you think?
No, it's the same skills.
They're all
It's the-
kids.
Yeah, it is the same thing.
So, you know, I see that the science fair is successful for that reason and will continue to be. But just suppose you took those same kids and you put them in front of a bunch of researchers in a tech park, say
Yeah.
at Kaka'ako, who knows? And you said, you know, now you can present your idea to some real scientists who are sitting as scientists, and see what they think. And likewise, you can listen to them, and you can learn from them when they present their research to you. And it's that exchange that builds critical mass.
Right.
So the science fair could go multiple steps further to achieve the what I call breakfast at Kaka'ako.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about relationships. It's about communication, it's connection, community, and yeah, that's you know, it's you know, it's everybody thinks it's only about science, but you know, in a way, we're using science as a tool, as one of the things, and the science fair as a tool to build not just scientists, but leaders, better people, better citizens of the world.
So what about these specific programs, like the robotics program? Where does that fit? Because that's an alternative program that the government has, you know, done a lot to put forward. It's, I don't know if it's a competition. Maybe it is a competition of
I
sorts.
believe so.
But people are, essentially, you buy the pieces of the robotics, you
Right.
put them together, and you design new robotics that are different than the other guy's robotics, and then you present that. It sounds something like the science fair, but somehow I think it's different.
I think it is different. You know, I think they have a great program. They've brought a lot of people. A lot of the public has become interested in robotics, and I would hope that from that initial interest that they will become more cognizant of science in general and how it plays a part in our everyday life. One thing that I think is so great about the science fair, however, is that it really builds kids' minds. It's the whole process of asking the right question, figure out how to answer it, the critical thinking that goes into every step of their project, and then communicating it to the broader. The communication thing I can't overemphasize.
I agree with you.
It's especially for kids, especially in science. I know a lot of scientists, and I think that if scientists in general could communicate what they're doing to the broader audience in a clearer way, then there'll be a lot less misunderstanding about science, and we just have a better world. I think communication to a broader audience has been a very challenging point for many scientists. And if you can teach the kids at a young age that this is really important. I know for myself, I struggled with this because you're spending so much time just on your small little project. Being able to step back and have the maturity to see it in the broader context is extremely challenging. And you really have to dig down deep in yourself to be able to extract the most salient parts of your project and be able to put it appropriately in the context of the whole world, and not to kind of go overboard. But if you can teach these things to kids at a young age, I think that alone would really be, worthwhile. It would really justify everything that we're doing.
Yeah. When I was a kid, we learned science. It seemed static. We didn't have this sense of dynamic that people now have. And on Saturday morning, there was Mr. Wizard on television. Mr. Wizard would show you about some kind of Ben Franklin thing with electricity and the key, and and that was science that was 200 years old, and it didn't give you the notion. It's something you had to understand, but it didn't give you the notion that things change. And now things change every day. So the thing about it is that, a project that's good one year really has to be modified in the next year if the kid is following what's going on.
Yeah.
Because the internet makes it real time, and he's got to track on the changes. So it's like when you first get to be a lawyer and you come out of law school, and then you find out that what you learned has just been changed by a legislature somewhere or a court. You say, gee, they're taking it away from me. I just learned this stuff, and now they're changing it all around. But that's exactly what happens in science.
Yeah, you have to be a student your whole life. You have to love learning. And I was just, I keep telling people, this is not your grandfather's science fair. This is cutting edge stuff. This is not kind of wacky, electrodes and just for demonstration. This is actually real science. This is actually doing stuff that nobody's ever done before. And it's hard to. It's hard to really make people convinced, it's hard for people to really understand that because maybe we don't give our kids enough credit. Maybe we don't think that they are capable of doing real science. But you've been to the science fair. You see what it's like. It's impressive. It's awesome.
It is.
It's even intimidating.
Yes, and you think too. To answer that question, when you talk to those kids, you feel fairly confident that if something else happened, if something new was on the horizon, either in that special question or in a larger area around that question, they'd be on it because they're following it. They're attached to it.
Yeah, like that student you mentioned whose work gained the interest of the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. He had a mathematical or computer model to simulate epidemics. And I tell you, if Hawaii was struck with bird flu or Ebola or anything, I would want somebody with that kind of expertise here in Hawaii to help us.
We got to keep them here, Neal.
We do.
And you're doing a wonderful job at it. Neal Atebara, Dr. Neal Atebara, my hero. Thank you for doing this. Thanks from all of us to you, Neal. And thanks for coming down on the show.
Thank you very much, Jay.
Aloha.
Aloha.